We're going to keep things moving here on the program, joined by a gentleman. We don't take this lightly. This gentleman, we go back to his time as the beat reporter for the Florida A&M Rattlers at the Tallahassee Democrat. Then I was, of course, SID, Sports Information Director, for those that don't know, at A&T. We're still doing our thing. He's doing his thing. Big time Grambling graduate. Like, I don't take Mike Wallace coming on our program for granted. He's a Grambling grad. He runs an NBA medium, meaning he's the senior editor of Grind City Media, which is the website that covers the Memphis Grizzlies, knows the NBA like no other, as Mike Wallace joins us here on the program. And by the way, not just the Grizzlies and the NBA, HBCU, Tennessee football throughout colleges, or for college throughout the state of Tennessee, et cetera, et cetera. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, what's going on, Donald, man? Glad to be with you this holiday weekend. Always a pleasure, man. We got so much to get to. It's always busy, man, but you keep it going. That introduction for me was great, but, man, you just triple that for when it's time for me to introduce you when you come on our shows, man. So that's love. That's all love right there.
I appreciate it. The HBCU Huddle. It's a must listen. And, of course, you can check Mike out at grindcitymedia.com. Yeah, we can talk about the Pacers, and we will. And we can talk about Minnesota, and we will. But I want to start here. The Lakers' job. Like you're hearing about a couple of, candidates, maybe some interviews have taken place. Your thoughts on where the Lakers' job is, A, and then B, Darvin Ham. I know we're past that, but obviously ultimately being let go.
And I'll start with the B first, man. I mean, Darvin Ham didn't do anything to deserve losing his job, 2 seasons in. I mean, he took those guys to the playoffs both seasons, got to the Western Conference Finals, coaching them last year, and then they went out in the first round this year. Obviously that's not the level of expectation for the Lakers, but no matter who you put in that situation, any coach, you could have traded positions with he and any other of the league's 29 coaches, and I'm not sure if the Lakers would have had a better resume over these 2 years than what Darvin Ham was able to get out. But what that tells me is that in this day and age of the NBA, coaches are easily the scapegoats. We obviously saw a situation develop as well with Bronny JB Bickerstaff losing his job in Cleveland just moments ago from that standpoint. So, these are guys that have gotten these teams to the playoffs. These are guys that are managing all of these massive egos. These are guys that have taken rosters that have been in flux the last 2 years. And unfortunately, these are 2 African-American men who should have a NBA future in the coaching ranks, that now they have another dark mark on their resume. So, again, no matter who takes the Lakers job moving forward, and you're hearing all kind of names, I'm not sure if that's going to be a fixable situation unless the players like LeBron James and Anthony Davis can fix it. They've invested money in their supporting cast. We've seen Rui Hachimura get his money. We've seen, Austin Rivers get his money. AR get his money from that standpoint. Austin Reed get his money from that standpoint. And, they just have to figure out the D'Angelo point guard position issue. They also have to get some guys healthy. We hadn't seen Gabe Vincent in 2 seasons now since he signed with those guys, basically, from that standpoint. Jared Vanderbilt hadn't been healthy for any stretch. So we hadn't seen them whole yet. But unfortunately, somebody has to take the fall, and that's the case right now. Whoever emerges is going to have their hands full. We've seen Scott Vogel. We've seen, obviously Darvin Ham. The list goes on and on and on if you want to go back further and further and further from there.
The Bickerstaff deal, that's a tough one, as you mentioned, because, look, yes, struggled against Orlando, but ultimately made it to the second round. Even if Mitchell had been healthy, that's a tough ask to beat. I mean, they may have won one more game. That's a tough ask to ask the Cavs to beat the best team in the league. So I guess that brewing over years. Did that in fact surprise you that Bickerstaff was let go?
It surprised me that he was let go, because this was a guy that was in, he could have been in Coach of the Year consideration in the last 2 years, for what he was able to do to help turn around Cleveland. It's also one of those deals where he's had to face a whole bunch of injuries with that roster. That roster hadn't gotten healthy. Donovan Mitchell missed, a stretch of games, a dozen to 20 games. Garland had some injuries earlier on. Then obviously, you finished the playoffs without Jared Allen. Mobley was out the first half of the year for a long time. And you could never put that team together to get it any kind of momentum. And for JB to still get this team where it got it, and to be game 6, you lose game 6 to the Boston Celtics, the #1 seed in the second round of the playoffs. First time you've gotten that far since, LeBron was wearing that uniform. It's like, what more could the guy have done? So what that tells me is that this wasn't about performance on the court. It was more about chemistry issues and relationships behind the scenes and where this team needs to go. So if it's one of those situations where you got to appease a segment of players, or you try to remain and have continuity among the coaching staff, obviously Gilbert and his front office chose to go, hey, we're going to try to figure out how to make these players happy and keep them happy versus trying to have continuity on the coaching staff. Who comes in and takes that job? That's another question. Like, it's not like it's a whole bunch of proven, qualified, certified answers that are just waiting outside, to come back into the NBA and take these jobs. When you let go of a guy like that who's done these kind of things, who are you out there trying to replace him with? That's going to be the big question. And I don't think there are any clear answers or easy answers. What I do know is that if my hometown Washington Wizards are smart, they better be on the phone right now with JB Bickerstaff to try to get him up there, because I think he would do wonders, coaching in sort of his father's footsteps. I remember when Bronny coached the Bullets when they were in the playoffs back in the day. And JB is certainly a hot commodity who deserves another shot.
Man, you said something there, Mike Wallace. You know what I'm saying? Because the Wizards are sort of really in a bad way. We're talking with Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media, talking some NBA with him here on the program. LeBron returns, right? Like, he returns to the Lakers, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I don't think unless something goes completely sideways, and he's going to do this song and dance, man. We've seen LeBron do this when teams are they would fire the coach, and then, he wants to have input, but not necessarily be the one that has to answer for who's going to get the coaching job. But he's going to have some influence there, specifically if all the reports and speculation is true and JJ Redick has emerged as a serious candidate. LeBron already has a relationship with JJ Redick. The question is JJ going to come in and with zero experience having coached, and is he going to be smart enough to put a quality staff together? Is it going to be one of those situations where, can he coach this team into some situations where they can be successful? Anthony Davis and LeBron James will not be easy to coach. They're two Hall of Famers, but they're at this stage of their careers where it's not given that they can lead you dynamically to a championship level. They need help. And that help has to first come from the bench, and then it has to come from the supporting cast. It's going to be, yes, I do see LeBron staying in LA. But again, I've seen him move 2 other times, and both times I was kind of surprised. So this one wouldn't surprise me no matter what he does.
And we must make notes. We mentioned, Mike in the open. Mike covered LeBron James during those years in Miami, even before that, the years with Wade in the first championship. As a matter of fact, want to make note of that. Were you in Chicago? Were you in?
Yes,
in Chicago?
Yes. The combine, the lottery. Yeah, I was in a sequestered room for the lottery, so I saw the ping pong balls go into the machine, and I saw it come out. And then 90 minutes later, we were able to leave that room after the nationally television show broadcast the lottery results. I was also in Chicago the next few days for the combine, so I was able to see, all of the top prospects and even some of the scrimmaging sessions too. So it was a great setup in Chicago. A lot of storylines coming out of there, man. And, we'll see how this draft falls, because these guys right now are literally all over the board when it comes to mock drafts.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about Bronny specifically, but you just reminded me of something, because you mentioned the ping pong balls and you talked about the Wizards. The ping pong balls were favorable. Nowhere in the world the Wizards should have picked. Well, not nowhere in the world, but they were very fortunate to get the number 2 pick. What do you see in terms of the talent in this year's upcoming draft? And can this be the year that maybe the Wizards, I'm being selfish here a little bit, but finally, get the pick right, if you will?
You know, it's hard to judge these drafts and these classes. I hear every year, oh, it's always next year is going to be the better class as opposed to this year. It always seems to be the following year that has the better class in terms of prospects. And I think sometimes, man, that's just a bunch of hogwash because you never know how these guys are going to eventually adapt and get into the NBA and perform. You know what I mean? You look at a team like the Wizards. Do you want the number 2 pick? Or do you want the number 12 pick? You definitely would rather be at number 2 no matter what, because now you get to kind of control the board. I do think all the indications are that Alexander Sarr, the 7-footer from France who played in Australia last year, is going to be the number 1 pick to the Hawks. And then the Wizards get to select whoever they want from that standpoint moving forward. So we'll see if the other kid from France gets to go and join Bilal in Washington, or if Washington goes a different way. It just depends on what that team wants to do, because I do think they can either say, you know what, let's trade out of this number 2, go get a veteran and fast track our rebuilding, or they can say, you know what, let's double down on the youth and completely start over with the new coaching staff. The front office just got reestablished there, and then they want to sort of build it the Oklahoma City way. So the Washington has all the options open right there. I'm impressed with their front office, their new front office team that was represented in Chicago. I think they're going to be smart. I think they're going to be reactive to what's going on in the league. And I also think they have a clear direction with what they want to do. So it's just a matter of which way they want to use this number 2 overall pick, because they certainly can use it as a strong asset either way.
We're talking with Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media. We're talking some NBA. We're going to step aside and take a break, come back. I want to talk Bronny. I want to talk series. I want to talk Sun situation. And I want to talk the future of the Knicks. More with Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media, on the other side. We're back here on the program. We're talking some NBA with Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media. Appreciate you, Mike, for sticking around. Bronny James, your thoughts on what you saw, and then, you know, because I think at one time maybe he definitely was linked with his father. Now it doesn't necessarily seem that way in terms of LeBron playing for the team that ultimately drafts Bronny. But your thoughts on, first of all, what you saw from him, and then where he could be drafted.
You know, it's such a delicate, subject when it comes to Bronny James, because to me, there's a little bit of a personal rooting interest for him, having been around his dad so long. And I remember being, obviously when LeBron was in Miami for those 4 years, Bronny was much younger, and I used to see him every day coming to practice, to games, when he was just a little tight, man. And to see him as a basically a young grown man right now, you watched him grow up, and the spotlight that he had to grow up under, and to still get to this point where he's even invited to a combine with a shot to be in the NBA speaks about his resolve, especially coming off of what he did the last couple of years with the heart issue last year. I just wish nothing but, the best and the best of health for him and his family first and foremost. This basketball stuff is going to work out. You know what I mean? I will say this. He doesn't jump off the page to me as a prospect. He was just another guy when it came to what he showed in the combine. And that's being transparent. That's being objective about it. You know what I mean? I want to see him succeed, but I didn't see anything that said, hey, this is a definite first or second round pick. You know what I mean? I saw this as a guy that, okay, if he in the G League, he can scrap and claw and fight his way into trying to become something, and we'll see where it goes from there. I do think he will get drafted, though. I find it hard to believe that because of the high profile, because of all that went into this, I do not think LeBron James, clutch management, and the NBA will have ushered this guy through an NBA combine without there already being some kind of understanding that, yes, some team will pick him at least in the second round. Because if you don't pick him, then it's almost like, wow, this dude did all of this and and he didn't make it, right? So I can't see that happening. I don't foresee that. I think the fact that some team may have already decided they were going to take him in the second round necessitated him having to be invited to the combine to justify that, more so than the other way around, right? So we'll see. I think his measurements were good. Can he play point guard? Can he facilitate? That's going to be the big question. He's not a natural facilitator at the NBA level just yet. His shooting, he tested well in a lot of the things. His vertical was great. His shooting skills off the dribble were great. Scrimmages, he didn't really light up anything. But having said that, we'll see how he works out in these individual workouts or if he even takes individual workouts. That'll be another clear sign in terms of where this thing is headed with Bronny.
Yeah, great insight on that, Mike. Let me switch gears, get back to a specific team in the Suns. Kevin Durant is losing years. He's getting older. Devin Booker, and he's still relatively young. Bradley Beal basically, in my opinion, gave the Suns nothing much anyway.
Yeah.
What I'm saying? Like this year. So, now you have Mike Budenholzer as part of the process as an NBA champion, of course, going back to, his days with the Bucks, where he ultimately a couple of years later got fired anyway. How much does now Budenholzer being there help the Suns to contend for an NBA championship?
It reeks of recycled, aspirations. You recycle a guy who was in the finals and wore out his welcome and wore on guys, and just a different voice was needed, right? Milwaukee just went through that too, trying to recycle Doc Rivers, and it didn't have any impact whatsoever on them midway through the season. Budenholzer is a brilliant regular season coach. His regular season resume speaks for itself. For what he was able to do and how he was able to get the Hawks to where he got them to when he did, the 60-win team with 4 All-Stars during his heyday with the Hawks. Then he went to Milwaukee and got a championship with Giannis. But he unceremoniously was escorted out after that. Can he get Phoenix to the next step? I don't know if coaching was the difference between Phoenix finishing, getting swept in the first round versus making it to the conference finals. I don't see them, even if they had Phil Jackson or Greg Popovich or whoever, I don't see them getting past Minnesota in that series, and I definitely don't see them advancing as far as the Western Conference Finals with the way that they got through the regular season. So it's a veteran voice. He knows how to treat veterans. He knows how to preserve guys' bodies. But is he an ego manager? We'll see, because that's what seems like Phoenix is going to need. How do you acquiesce to Kevin Durant, but also stay true to Devin Booker, who is truly your franchise icon? How do you get something out of Bradley Beal, because you're paying him like a number 1 max guy, and he's giving you number 3.5 type of production, and he hasn't been healthy yet because of a full season. So that's a hard job to have, man, because you're cash strapped. You don't have much flexibility, but you have elite expectations, and that's a difficult place to be. So I think he can do a good job. So kudos to him for getting a guaranteed 5-year deal where he's going to get almost $50 million to do it. So he's safe and secure when it comes to that. He's an Arizona native, so I think he's going to be sparked. He's going to have that energy back again that kind of waned in Milwaukee, and we'll see. It's always going to be a year-to-year thing with these guys, because if they don't advance to the Western Conference Finals next year, that's another year of failure. They're either getting to the finals or it's a bust, and that's where it is when you're with Kevin Durant at this stage of his career.
No doubt about it. Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media, joining us here on the program for a couple of more moments talking some NBA. The Knicks' future, and what I mean by that, Anunoby, I believe, is a free agent. Is that?
I need to check on that. I thought they traded him there with hopes that he would sign an extension, and I think if he hasn't signed the extension or isn't extension eligible, then he may have another year. But yes, I know he was coming up on something where they got to make a decision on him for sure. Okay, and that said, look, Knicks fans will say, well, we were injured. And yeah, they had some injuries, right? But I think you were still up 2-0 without Anunoby, without what's my man that got injured early on? Julius Randle.
So you still up 2-0 and you lost. So whatever, to me. But that said, what do you do? The Knicks need another piece to take, in fact, that next step? I thought they played above themselves. I thought they played extremely well, but it wasn't enough to get it done to at least make it to the Eastern Conference Final. Do they need a little bit more?
Yes, they definitely need more. I think they put a lot of burden on Brunson, and he was able to carry it as long as he could. I think Tibbs needs to, and again, we've been saying this about Tibbs for 3 stops now. We said it about him in Chicago. He's running guys into the ground. They get to the playoffs into a 7-game series, and they can never maximize because of injuries. We said that in Minnesota. The only guy that really responded was Jimmy Butler that he had in Minnesota when it came time to really put those minutes and those heavy burdens on him. The Knicks were a fascinating story this playoff series. but they had a slugfest against Philly. Then they had a slugfest against Indiana. And it was just tough to try to get past all of that and still be healthy. Guys were falling apart left and right. You can have a badge on your back and say, hey, I played 48, 47 minutes, the way Hart was playing and the way Brunson was playing. But then when you see guys have hamstrings and groins and tweaks like that, you're basically saying, look, I'm running these guys. These are fatigue type injuries. These are muscle strains because of overuse. You know what I mean? Now Brunson went out. It was a freak injury where he, fractured his finger or whatever, his hand. That could have happened at any point. But I do think they need another piece. It's going to be interesting to see how they value Randall and whether Randall feels like, okay, this team moved on without me. Can they do something and get another player in at his salary point that could be a little bit more of a punch? Will they bring back Anunoby? I think they will, because they saw how successful they could be with him. And he's a prototypical Tom Thibodeau type wing that can 3-and-D and just be physical. So I do think the Knicks, this wasn't a passing fancy. I think these guys are going to be factors in the East. They were the number 2 seed, and they got there because they deserved it. Now, can you preserve them through a regular season and keep them healthy going through the playoffs? We'll see where it goes from there.
Looking at these series, the Pacers, and let's start with the Pacers and the Celtics. Mm-hmm. And look, the series is where it is. However, it could be a lot different for the Pacers right now. Probably should have won game 1, did not. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts on the series? Who did you have going in, and then your thoughts on how the series may progress?
Yeah, the initial impressions of these 2 conference final series, man. It's you felt going in that all of the hype was around Boston, all the expectations was around Boston. But one of the things I was telling people, both in my office and throughout the league, is that Boston is facing something in Indiana that they hadn't seen through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They're facing a team that's healthy, that doesn't have any major injuries, and they're facing a team that has depth and role players who accept their roles, right? New York was banged up. You know what I mean? So Indiana got past New York, but they still earned their way past them. I don't think Indiana got enough credit for what they were able to do to resolve the New York Knicks and figure out that. But Boston faced 2 teams. I mean, Miami didn't have Jimmy Butler, and that whole squad fell apart towards the end of that series. And then when you move forward beyond that, I mean, this is a team that really just didn't, they didn't have to do much to really, Donovan Mitchell couldn't finish the series. And then at the beginning, you didn't have Jared Allen. So Boston kind of, they did what they needed to do. But now they're facing a team that's hungry, that found their rhythm and has some confidence. So after that game 1, you say, okay, which team should you be more worried about? Which team walked away with the most worries? Did Indiana feel like, man, we let one get away? Absolutely. You're up, with 3 with a few seconds left. You could have strategized your way out of that with a victory. You had a couple bad turnovers and you gave up a 3-point shot, forced overtime and lost. But if you're Boston, you're saying we got 36 from Tatum. We got 28 or whatever from Brown. Drew Holiday played above his scoring average. Al Horford had a phenomenal game, and we barely got by them. If you're Indiana, you're saying, you know what? This is our game. We play to our style. This is how we play. We don't have to do much of anything different. So now we'll see. What I do know for both of these series is that neither one of them is going to be over with 2 games in. It's just not. And we've seen that time and time. A team went up, you just mentioned it. The Knicks went up 2-0, ended up losing the series. So where this thing goes heading in further into the holiday weekend, there's still a lot of games left to play, barring anyone getting injured, and we'll see how it resolves going into next week.
And then quickly with Minnesota, they dominated Denver in the beginning. Denver came back, and then it was a resounding come-from-behind victory to beat the defending champs. And an opportunity in game 1 goes by the wayside for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
It did. And credit Dallas for the way that they played. They intended to pack the paint. They weren't going to let Anthony Edwards get into the paint. They basically played way off of Kyle Anderson and said, okay, slow-mo, beat us with your jump shot. If you're going to be the 3rd or 4th or 5th option that has to score 15 or 20 to win this game, we're fine with that. We're not going to let anybody else get off from by driving into the lane. You're going to have to beat us shooting jump shots. And Dallas, that's a team that has closers, man. All they want to do is spar with you for 3.5 quarters and give Luka and Kyrie a chance with 5 minutes left in the game to go make dagger plays. And those are the 2 biggest dagger players we have in the league right now. And, when you have two of them on the same team, all you need is those two guys to lead you and a bunch of athletes to get tip outs, 50-50 balls, putbacks, and all those kind of things. The Derek Lively's, obviously the Daniel Gaffords, those kind of guys, man. You have that. And, Dallas is going to be a headache, man. They just are. I picked Minnesota to win the series, but I wasn't convicted in that pick. I felt like I want Dallas to win, but I needed to pick Minnesota because that's the smarter pick. But either way it goes, man, I want to see a great series, and I think we're in store for a great series on that side for sure.
No doubt about it. Follow him on Twitter at or X as it were, at @MyMikeCheck. Check out his great content at grindcitymedia.com. He is Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media, joining us here on the program. Mike, we appreciate the time, my friend. Man, we look forward to talking with you real soon.
No doubt about it, man. Thanks a lot for having me. I love talking to NBA and the league with you, and we definitely got to do this as we move forward into the conference finals, the NBA finals, and then into the offseason as well, brother. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm a big fan of your work. Hey, if you're not following BOXTOROW and Donal Ware and all he's doing, man, you're missing something. So stop missing it and make sure you hit it up and take care of it from there.